everyone, and welcome back. Bitcoin just smashed through $100,000. I mean, it's wild, right?
It is.
We've got everyone talking about it. Financial publications are going nuts. International news can't get enough of it. Even, the old guard, those traditional finance folks are like, wait, what's happening? So today, we're going to do a deep dive into this whole thing.
Yeah.
We're going way past just like the headlines. We want to figure out what this surge actually means. What does it mean for everyone? What does it mean for the world? What does it mean for you?
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating moment in financial history.
Yeah.
I think not just because of the dollar amount, but really kind of what the journey represents.
Right. And speaking of the journey, let's rewind a little bit. Do you remember that story back in 2010? The guy who bought 2 pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoin?
Oh, yeah. Bitcoin Pizza Day.
Pizza Day.
Yeah.
Back then, Bitcoin was basically worthless. I mean, each of those pizzas today would be worth, what, like $500 million each?
It's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah, and it kind of highlights just the exponential growth of this technology that we've seen,
Yeah.
From something that was traded for pizza to, breaking 6 figures in a little over a decade. It's unprecedented.
It makes you really question everything you thought you knew about value.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like the internet of money disrupting everything.
Yeah.
And, speaking of disruption,
Sure.
we can't ignore, I guess, what's the elephant in the room? Trump wins the election.
Right.
Becomes super pro-crypto.
Right.
And suddenly, Bitcoin's like
But
on a rocket ship. Is that just a coincidence?
it's tough to say for sure.
Yeah.
I think that Trump's influence is undeniable.
Right.
His very vocal pro-crypto stance, his pledge to make the U.S. like the crypto capital of the world. Even appoint Paul Atkins to chair the SEC.
Yeah.
Paul Atkins is, a known Bitcoin advocate.
Huge signals.
Huge signals.
Yeah. It's almost like he's legitimizing crypto in a way that previous administrations just haven't.
Right.
But then you've got these legendary investors, Warren Buffett,
Right.
Charlie Munger, Jamie Dimon, all saying, Bitcoin is a bubble, it's a fraud.
Uh-huh.
Even going so far as to say it's rat poison squared. How do we even begin to reconcile these completely opposite viewpoints?
It's really interesting because, I think back to when a lot of those criticisms were made, and Bitcoin was a fraction of what it is today.
Right.
And, year after year, it continues to defy their predictions.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting question.
So are they just missing it? Are they just stuck in this old model that doesn't really account for this kind of innovation?
Yeah. I think it really raises a very interesting question. How well do traditional institutions understand this kind of disruptive technology, especially technology that operates outside of the established systems of control?
Right. It's like they're looking at a smartphone and they just see a fancy calculator, right?
That's a great analogy.
And then you have Elizabeth Warren,
Yes.
who's coming at it from a completely different angle.
Right.
The environment.
Yeah, she's criticizing, the energy consumption of Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
Which is, a valid concern,
Right.
for sure. But some people, tie that back to her criticism of the Federal Reserve.
Uh-huh.
So it's a complex issue.
It is a complex issue. Okay. So we've got this fascinating mix of political influence, skepticism from these financial giants, and then environmental concerns. But beyond all that, what's really driving the value of Bitcoin? Like, why are people so drawn to this?
That's where I think it gets really interesting because we start to see a shift, right?
Yeah.
In how people perceive value and control.
Right.
Particularly when it comes to money.
So let's dive into that a little bit. What are they seeing that they're not finding in the traditional system?
Well, I think one of the key factors is growing investor interest.
Okay.
And not just from the usual suspects. So we're starting to see institutional investors look at Bitcoin as a legitimate asset class.
Okay.
A potential hedge against inflation.
Yeah.
A way to diversify their portfolio. So, it's not just tech enthusiasts anymore.
So it's not just about the tech, it's going mainstream.
It's going mainstream. It's, there's a growing awareness of the potential here.
Yeah.
But I think beyond even the profit motive, there's a deeper current here.
There's got to be, right? It's got to be more than just making a quick buck.
Yeah. It's about, we're seeing a rejection of fiat currency.
Okay.
A system where governments control the money supply.
Right.
and can manipulate its value. And people are looking for alternatives, especially with, inflation on the rise.
So it's like this way to opt out of a system that maybe they don't feel like they have control in.
Exactly. It's a way to regain control over your finances.
Okay.
And to have true financial sovereignty. To not have to rely on these traditional intermediaries like banks and governments.
And isn't that the ultimate, validation of free market principles?
I think so.
I mean, this is capital flowing to something that people believe in.
Yeah.
Not because the government's saying this is what it's worth.
Yeah, it's a real testament to the power of a decentralized system.
Right.
Where trust is established through cryptography, through consensus mechanisms, not through reliance on these central authorities.
That's a huge departure from how we've traditionally thought about money.
Which is.
For sure. But this begs the question, how does it even work? What is this blockchain everybody keeps talking about?
That's a great question. And I think it's crucial to understanding, the true potential of this technology. It's not just magic internet money.
Yeah.
There's this sophisticated system here that I think is worth diving into.
Okay. Let's do it. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's dive into how this blockchain thing works. This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
It does.
All right, so blockchain. Before we go any further, we've got to break this thing down.
Yeah.
It gets thrown around constantly.
Right.
But I think a lot of people still don't really know what it is. So what is it? How does it actually make Bitcoin work?
Well, imagine, a digital ledger, a record of transactions.
Okay.
That's not stored in one place, but it's distributed across a network of computers.
So instead of a bank holding all the records, it's spread out among a bunch of different computers.
Exactly. And each block in this chain contains a batch of these verified transactions. And these blocks are linked together cryptographically, creating this permanent, tamper-proof record.
Okay, that sounds pretty secure, but how do you prevent someone from just hacking into one of the computers and messing with the record?
Right, and that's where the real genius of blockchain comes in.
Yeah.
Because every time a new block is added to the chain, it has to be verified by multiple computers on the network.
Got it.
And this process, called mining, involves solving these complex
mining
mathematical problems. Yeah.
So it's like this giant decentralized puzzle that everybody's working on at the same time.
You could say that. And the more computers that are participating in this process, the more secure the network becomes.
Yeah.
It makes it almost impossible for any single entity to kind of control or manipulate the blockchain.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. So we've got this decentralized secure system, operates outside of these financial institutions.
Right.
Which kind of brings up a whole bunch more questions, who's in charge? How do we even regulate something like this?
Those are the questions, right?
Yeah.
The $1 million questions, or I guess in this case, the $100,000 questions.
It's that lack of central authority that's both, exciting and kind of terrifying.
It is, yeah.
For regulators especially.
Yeah. And that's why we're seeing, this kind of global tug of war between those who want to embrace the potential of cryptocurrencies like this and those who really want to rein them in.
It's the Wild West of finance.
It is.
It's a new frontier.
Yeah.
A lot of potential, but also a lot of unknowns.
A lot of unknowns. And, how governments, how regulators grapple with this technology.
Yeah.
I think it will have really profound implications.
Yeah.
For the future of finance as a whole.
So are we headed towards a world where Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, are these going to become the norm? Are we all going to be paying for our pizzas with digital tokens instead of dollars?
It's certainly possible. We're already seeing signs of that, right?
Yeah.
Some countries are adopting Bitcoin as legal tender.
Right.
Others are exploring the creation of their own central bank digital currencies.
Yeah.
So, even governments are recognizing that.
Well, even governments are getting on board.
They're getting on board. They're recognizing that they can't ignore this.
Yeah.
It's too disruptive.
Right.
It's too powerful.
Right.
But, the question is, will they embrace it, for its potential? Or will they try and control it to kind of maintain the status quo?
Okay. Well, let's bring it back down to earth for a second. What does this mean for the average person? Someone who's not, a tech expert, not some Wall Street investor.
Right.
How does Bitcoin actually impact their lives?
Yeah, and that's where I think things get really interesting because For people who are, unbanked or underbanked,
Okay.
especially in developing countries, Bitcoin offers a way to access financial services that they may not have had before.
So it's not just about, speculation and getting rich quick.
No, it's about, financial inclusion.
Right.
Empowerment, giving people control over their own money.
But let's be real. I mean, Bitcoin is it's incredibly volatile. We've seen these massive price swings, people getting rich overnight, other people, losing everything. That's got to be scary for some folks.
Yeah, it's definitely a factor to consider. Volatility is inherent in any emerging market.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is still a relatively young technology.
Okay.
As adoption grows, as the market matures, hopefully we'll see some of that volatility stabilize.
So it's all about finding that balance between the potential and the caution. But even with all the risks, there's something, I don't know, incredibly optimistic about this whole Bitcoin thing.
I think so, too. I think it represents, a shift in power, a democratization of finance that has the potential to really benefit individuals in ways we're only beginning to imagine.
It's like what the internet did for information.
Right.
Bitcoin's doing the same thing for money, challenging the gatekeepers, creating new opportunities, empowering people to participate in this global system.
Absolutely.
But as we move towards this decentralized future, more questions pop up. What happens to these traditional financial institutions?
Right.
What role do governments play in all of this?
Right.
How do we navigate the ethical questions that come with a technology that, kind of sits outside all the norms?
These are the questions that we have to grapple with.
Yeah.
And they're not easy to answer.
Yeah.
But I think one thing is clear. The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, the blockchain technology that it's built on, this is unleashed a force that's reshaping everything.
This has been a whirlwind tour, really, of the world of Bitcoin, from these humble beginnings to this global phenomenon.
Right.
But there's still one more layer that we gotta peel back.
Yeah, I agree.
One that goes beyond, the technical stuff, the financial stuff.
I think you could call this the philosophical layer.
Yeah.
Like the implications
Yeah.
of what it really means to live in a world where money is no longer controlled by governments and banks.
That's where things get really interesting. We've talked about the tech, the market forces, the regulations, all that.
Yeah.
But I think, what about the human element to all of this? What does Bitcoin's rise tell us about our values, our desires, maybe even our fears?
Well, I think at its core, Bitcoin is about empowerment.
Okay.
It's about individual empowerment. It's this rejection of centralized control.
Yeah.
It's reclaiming agency in a world where so much feels out of our control.
It's like a digital declaration of independence, right?
Yeah.
We're not just talking about money anymore. We're talking about freedom.
Right.
Freedom from institutions, from gatekeepers, maybe even these old ways of thinking about value.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin embodies this very specific kind of freedom.
Okay.
The freedom to transact without needing permission.
Right.
To store value without having to rely on a third party.
Uh-huh.
To participate in a global financial system without, needing a bank account.
But that kind of freedom, that has to be, unsettling.
It is.
To some people.
Right.
It challenges everything.
It does.
It creates uncertainty. And let's be honest, it can be exploited too.
Of course. Yeah. There's always that tension, right?
Yeah.
Between freedom and security.
Yeah.
Between innovation and regulation.
Right.
And I think Bitcoin forces us to kind of confront those tensions head on. It's not, a packaged solution. It's more like this catalyst for this much larger conversation about how we want to structure society in this digital age.
So it's not about whether, Bitcoin hits 200,000 or crashes back down.
Yeah.
It's about what we do with it.
Yes.
What are we building? What are the possibilities? What are the pitfalls?
What does a future with decentralized finance look like? Imagine a world where access to financial services is no longer determined by your geography, your socioeconomic status, where individuals have, greater control over their data, their assets, where transparent and accountable systems replace these opaque and often corrupt institutions.
Okay.
That sounds...
It's a vision.
It is.
A little bit.
It is.
But how do we get there?
Right. And that's where I think, the real work comes in.
Right.
It's education. It's building the infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's addressing those ethical concerns that you talked about. And this is where I think, individual action is so important.
Right.
Educate yourself about this technology, engage in these discussions.
Yeah.
Support responsible development, and demand transparency from the people who are building this space.
It's like we're all pioneers now.
Right.
We're navigating this uncharted territory. We're making choices now that'll affect, generations to come.
I think what's so remarkable about Bitcoin is that it sparked this global conversation, right?
Yeah.
About money, about technology, about power. It's forced us to ask these fundamental questions about the nature of value, about trust, about control.
And that conversation, it feels like it's just getting started.
It really does.
Whether you're, all in on Bitcoin or you're still kind of, skeptical, you can't deny that something big is happening.
Yeah, there's a shift happening.
A shift. Maybe a shift in human consciousness.
Maybe. Yep.
The future's unfolding right in front of us, and what we do now matters.
I agree.
This has been, an incredible deep dive.
It has.
Into this crazy world of Bitcoin. And, from those humble beginnings to where it is now.
Yeah.
It's been quite the journey.
It has.
I have a feeling this conversation is far from over, though.
I don't think it is either.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Bitcoin. Hopefully you got some new insights.
Yeah.
Maybe even some things to think about.
Absolutely.
But until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep on diving deep.
I like it.